isn't it? And then you find just a short, fat old bloke. So yeah, it's very hard. Has anybody ever found it's really hard? So let me tell you, I'm 62, okay? So I'm guessing I'm older than most of you. In fact, I might even be older than some of you put together, which means I've done a lot of stuff. And so I don't quite know where to begin, actually. I'll begin with that. It's just a dot. So when somebody said, talk about happiness, there's a big question, well, what the hell does happiness mean, you know? I mean, really, what does it mean? And how do you know if you're happy? So what does happiness mean? What do you... So tell me what you think happiness means. I'm just intrigued. Now that's interactive, right? Mm-hmm. So I've entered, now you become active. So what does happiness mean?
Well, in Zen, they believe there's no happiness or sadness, it's just a flow.
Yep.
So that's what I think. I don't think there's happiness or sadness.
So happiness is not something, right, that's it, I'm happy, yeah. Tick. Exactly. Next. No. Next is car. Yeah.
It's not in material things.
Yeah, it's really hard to define, isn't it?
It's not in a person, it's not in a thing, it's just a state of mind.
Perfect.
I think it is the way.
Yeah, and is the journey, is it the journey or the destination which makes you happy?
The journey.
Always the journey. Yeah. So look, this is not going to be formal, but it appears to be formal because I've got the clicker, so I'm in charge, right? And I've done a few things. But you can ask me any question at all, and I'm really happy if you want to stop me and we'll just have an exploration. But I tell you what I'll do. I'll share a few things with you, and then we'll see if that stimulates anything. Does that make sense? Yeah, are you okay? So let me see if I can find something to tell you about me so that you know what the hell's going on. Blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not going to do that. So pretend this is a really slick, well presented, well done presentation. Is that all right? Do you think you can pretend that? Can you all say, oh Marcus, this is so good? Yeah, it's great. Just keep going on that. So I'm going to try and... Oh, that's no good, is it? So I'm going to try and find something which will tell you something about who I am, so that we've got a fighting chance of seeing which way might we go. So Marcus, credentials, there we go. So this is me, all right? So ask me anything. So that's me. I'm 62, I told you that already. I've got my own house, got my own hair, got my own teeth, got my own cars and all that stuff. I still don't know what I want to do. No idea. I enjoy some things. I enjoy racing. I enjoy historic buildings. I like all that stuff. So if you've got any good ideas, just let me know. I do have a CV. This is my CV. I was born in London, brought up between London and Paris. Went to university in a place called Bristol, which is in the UK. It's far enough from home that your parents aren't going to come and see you all the time, but not so far that you can't go back to get more money. You know, so there's a perfect distance. Then I became a chartered accountant, director of recruitment and all this stuff. These CVs tell you nothing. They're just bits of words. And if anybody here has ever done a CV, you probably realise, oh, this isn't really me. You know, so I try to make it more interesting. This is me. When I was at university, I built and raced cars. I got sponsored to race cars. When I was 24, I thought it's time to buy my first Ferrari. But you know, if you're 24 and you buy your first Ferrari, you're probably going to get ripped off when you try to get it serviced. So I thought, right, I'll buy the garage. And it just happened to be Europe's largest Ferrari independent, which I had no idea about. And then I sort of accidentally became in charge of recruitment for a firm called EY, Ernst & Young, which is a firm of professional consultants. And I became director in corporate finance and director of recruitment for UK, then North America and Asia Pacific. So I was in charge of UK, North America and Asia Pacific, and at the same time being a director in corporate finance. So basically, wherever I was in the wrong place. you know, all the time in the wrong place. Then I bought an antique shop, which became 17 shops. So suddenly I earned a lot of money outside of work. And so when I was at work, I didn't care what I said to anybody. And the more I didn't care what I said, the faster I got promoted. And all my friends got really angry. Have you ever been in a meeting and you know exactly what needs to be said, but nobody wants to say it because they're all scared? So I just said it. And they were, oh, Marcus, you're so creative. And I got promoted. Ridiculous. And then we thought, let's make London better. And there were 8 of us. And everybody laughed. And then real estate-wise, we borrowed a lot of money. So altogether, I borrowed about £7,000 million and repaid it all. So Broadgate, Ludgate, Stockley Park, British Land, all that sort of stuff. That's the environment I worked in. But whilst doing that, I also continued working with young people. So when I was director for recruitment, I started working with young people, and I've continued that to this day. So tomorrow I'm in Klagenfurt, which is sort of Slovenia, Austria, working with a couple of hundred kids. And then I'm going to do a little bit of work with them and then get a few of them onto the TED stage on Saturday. And I think 6 months ago I was in Prague talking to 300 students. And we went to this crazy, every year they fly me out, and I went to this crazy aircraft, which is like a bar in the middle of bloody nowhere. Do you know the place? Yeah, I love it. As we go on to that missile silo type place and then go to some weird place. And then I sort of continued this weird journey of discovery, set up a software company with a friend of mine that know nothing about software, but we thought that would be fun. Got involved in power line technology. And then miraculously I got asked to open a new British school. I thought it was rubbish. I thought, I can't understand why this new school is doing the same stuff as the old school did. I don't understand it. You know, if we're going to spend money and we're going to create a new school, surely what we do inside it should be different. And everybody said, oh, you don't understand, Marcus. And so I managed to get hold of £5,000 million to do some cool stuff in schools. And then all of a sudden, my career changed and I started working with young people and so on. Does that all make sense? So I'm guessing some of you think, I'm just an arse. So what do you think my background is? Just for a moment. So you're intelligent people. What do you think my background is? What sort of family do you think I came from? What?
Large family.
Sorry?
Large family.
Large family.
Working class.
Working class. Too nice. In this country we have, you probably noticed, we have an enormous amount of analysis done on the way people speak. And we have this crazy class system, and a lot of it depends upon the way one speaks, the language one uses. The language one uses, not the language you use, but the language one uses. Do you sort of follow? Yeah. And one says words like issue as opposed to issue, and all this stuff. So what else? What else?
I think my guess is that you didn't really have much in the family because you are very driven to push yourself and build up all those things and do different things.
What about my parents? What do you think they were like? Or are like?
Farmers.
Farmers. We have a farm just here. See that grass? That's our farm. So I'll share with you and see if, so build the mind picture and then I'll share with you and see if that fits with what you thought, okay? My father's still alive. I hate him. He is an arse. My mother was French and Spanish. She was born in Ireland. My parents met in London. I was born in London and taken to Paris. My first language is Russian. My second language is French. And I didn't know any English at all as a kid. But the household I lived in was very violent. My father used to attack me and my mother for no reason. He didn't have to be drunk. He is just an arse. You know what I mean? The reason I discovered why I wear spectacles, I read my mother's diaries for the first time, about 25 years ago. The reason why I wear spectacles is because in a fight between my mother and my father, he picked me up, threw me out of the apartment. 2 floors, landed on stone steps, broke the side of my head. It's had to be reconstructed. At the age of 5, there was a really bad fight between my mother and my father. I woke up in the middle of the night to find my mother on the floor, my father stamping on her and kicking her. I tried to save her. I got a dislocated neck, broken ribs, broken collarbone, usual sort of stuff. But my mother was so severely beaten that she became brain damaged. Police came and took my father away. Ambulance came and took me and my mother away. My mother was brain damaged. She couldn't give evidence. I was mute. You know, I was so scared I couldn't talk, so I couldn't give evidence. So my father got off. He was released. And it was my grandmother, that's my father's mother, who saved me. She rescued me from Paris to take me to London to hide me from my father, her son. I wasn't on her passport, so I got caught by immigration at Heathrow Airport, and I got taken into care. You know care? And I got put into a kids' home where I was cute. Hello, and I was really cute. And all the others were not cute, and they were all about 15 to 18 years old. It was in Tooting, which is in southwest London. They didn't speak any Russian, they didn't speak any French. It was horrible. It took my grandmother about 4 months to get me released into her care, and then she put me into a convent, not a school, a convent. It was fantastic. All the women there were all becoming nuns. So they just looked after me. I was the only boy. I said, oh, it was wonderful. They really looked. And then it all ended and I had to go to proper school. And that was terrible. And then we got Mama. Then my grandmother got my mother out of a mental hospital in Paris to live with us. And so I was living with my grandmother and my mother, who was in a really bad state. So we had no money. I got my first job when I was 14. I paid my way through university by buying and selling cars. At the age of 23, my grandmother had to give up. When I was 23, my grandmother gave up work when she was 72 years old because she could no longer walk to the train station. It was too far for her. She had really bad angina, so I had to buy her apartment, which I did when I was 23 by saying all sorts of things to get the money. And so when I was 24, I thought, if I could do that, I could buy a Ferrari. Does that make sense? And everything happened from there. That's it. Does that all make sense?
Not at all. It's an impressive story, Michael.
Well, I prefer not to do it again, but I think what happens there is you suddenly realise what's important, and actually, if you have nothing, it's much easier because you've got nothing to lose. The worst is complacency. The worst is when people say it's okay, it's good enough. You know, it could be better. It could. No. You know, I think we are all going to die. That's the really unfortunate thing. So the question is, when we die, what trace do we want to leave? What evidence is there of me having existed? And for me, I want to leave a bit of a trace. So I don't have children because I was really scared that I was going to become like my father. Can you imagine? So it's really screwed me up. It's the worst thing which could have ever happened to me, is to have a father, well, for a number of reasons. But I should have let that go. But it's still, in English terms, fucking me up, you know? So I don't have kids, so all I can do is to say, well, if I can help other people try and develop their own lives, then we might have a chance. So since then, I've worked with nearly 100,000 kids, and I run programs to show kids where the future could be. And out of the kids I've worked with directly, I didn't get paid to begin with, so it cost me probably £750,000, maybe more than that, to work with these kids. And so far the kids I work with are kids who are difficult, and we're doing, and if you're interested, I can share with you some stuff which we do. And so far, out of all the kids I've worked with, who are all in complex circumstances, all in difficult schools, all with difficult parents, all with difficult everything. The vast majority of academically, although we do no teaching, the vast majority have got academic results which are slightly better than the average of kids in private schools. And to me, that's one of those moments when you go, if you don't mind the expression, fuck you. You know, when people are these kids and they're like, fuck you, of course they can. There's nothing to dictate what's your intelligence, there's nothing to dictate what you can do. The only thing which can prevent you is you. Ta-da! So does that make sense? So that's me. Is that okay, everybody? So, don't all go quiet. You've all gone really quiet. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I hope you don't think I'm an arse. And the interesting thing about the journey, if that makes any degree of sense, is that you discover a whole load of stuff about yourself. A whole load of stuff. The real thing which happened to me probably happened when I was, so from the age of about, I'll tell you how screwed up I was, all right? From the age of 13, 14, my grandmother had her room, I had a different room, and my mother was in another room in the apartment. And we used to move apartments all the time. From about the age of 13, I used to creep into my grandmother's room every 2 hours, and I had a little makeup mirror. You know the mirrors which you can have as a makeup mirror? And I used to creep in and just check that she was still breathing, because I was absolutely scared shitless that she was going to die, and I'd be back in that awful care home again. So that continued until I was 16, and then I thought, well, it's all right now, because I'll be, what an arse I was, you know, because I thought if she dies before I'm 16, I'm fucked. If she dies after I'm 16, it's okay, I'm an adult. And from about the age of 14, I was responsible for putting the drugs out which my mother had to take in order to keep her alive. And she had to take a lot of drugs. Do tell, is this okay, by the way? If this is okay, I'll stop, all right? Is this all right? Shall I keep going? So she had to take a lot of drugs to keep her alive. And I was responsible for putting the drugs out in the right order. You know this sort of stuff? And then one day I was going to work. It was January. I was just 17, and I closed the door of the apartment. My grandmother had gone off much earlier. Closed the door of the apartment and went off to work. As I went off, and I was working in the city. I was working in a shop. I loved it. And as I went off, I couldn't remember if I checked the drugs. You know? Have you ever done that? Have you ever left home and you close the door and you go, oh, I wonder if I flushed the toilet? Yeah, you're right. It was one of those. You know, you always do. And as I continued on my journey, I started to think, oh, I better turn back. I don't know if I've done it. Has that happened to anybody here? And I thought it'll be all right. Then at 4 o'clock that day, I got a phone call. And the manager of the shop said, Marcus, you better take this. So I went off to take the call. I said, hello, it's Marcus Orlovsky here. And it was the police. And I said, you found my mum? And yes. Now, previously, there'd been a bit of a reputation. My mother had been sectioned. She'd been in a mental hospital because, in UK, because she left home once, did something stupid, got arrested. So I thought it was that. And I said, okay, don't worry. I'll leave now. It'll take me about an hour to get home. Don't do anything silly. It'll be fine. And I remember they said, there's no need to hurry, Mr. Orlovsky. And I remember distinctly the words, which I said, well, why not? You know? And the words which came back was, because she's dead. It wasn't, we're really sorry to have to tell you your mother's died. It was because she's dead. And that's how I discovered that my mother died. And she died of a drugs overdose. I hadn't checked the drugs. And she had eaten a bottle of tofranil and a bottle of Librium, and then gone for a walk. And if you eat a bottle of tofranil and a bottle of Librium, it'll stop your heart. And my mother died in the street on her own. Couldn't believe it. And my grandmother, who was Russian Orthodox, she was born Countess Vladimira Orlovskaya in St. Petersburg. So she came from this amazing family. And she ended up having to have her apartment, a shitty apartment bought by her fucking grandson. Can you believe that? She met Rasputin. Oh, this terrible fall. And her whole life was looking after me and looking after my mother, who my father had put into this terrible state. And I killed her by not checking the drugs. And my grandmother was so upset. And there was a post-mortem, you know, and my grandmother said, Marcus. She used to call me Malchik, Malenki Malchik. And she used to say to me, did you check the drugs? No. And did you know you hadn't checked them? Yes. Why didn't you turn back? And she was so upset that I had to choose the coffin for my mother. And I went round to the funeral buys and I discovered what a coffin is, Russian Orthodox orthodox, and so we had an oak casket with brass handles and a silk lining and an opening so you could see the face and all this stuff. And then I had to choose the cemetery for my mother, for my grandmother to be buried in, for my mother to be buried in. I had to choose the cemetery. And that was awful because the council were going to put in the next one, which was by a main road. And my mother was brought up in a farm, you know, in Ireland, and she loved animals. So I went round to different cemeteries to negotiate to see if I could find a place by a tree with some birds and all this stuff. And it was awful having to negotiate. And I negotiated on money and all this sort of bullshit, you know? And then the moment of the funeral came. And I paid for it because I was earning money, you know? And I remember being in the church, I was at the front, and the doors opened, and the funeral directors came down, carrying my mother's casket on their shoulders. And I was wondering why on their shoulders? Well, the handles are strong. I checked them. I was geeky. Right? I checked the handles. They were solid brass. They were really good. And they were carrying on the shoulder. So I thought, this is very strange. So I walked down the aisle. And you could see the people in the congregation were going, oh, you know, it's a bit weird, it's walking down the aisle. And I was feeling the casket. And it wasn't oak. It was that shit stuff which looks like oak, but it's plastic, you know? And the handles weren't made out of brass, they were plastic, you know? And you can tell because they're warm to the touch, whereas brass would be cold. I was furious. And I went back to my pew. And have you ever had the emotion which is so powerful you don't know whether to laugh, cry, scream, yell, just go completely apeshit? It was all there. And then the priest started and the funeral directors went back. And in the end I just stood up and I just yelled, I'm stopping this thing, I'm stopping it, I'm stopping this! And the priest sort of said, you've got to let go, you know, ashes to ashes, everything comes to an end. And I remember swearing at the priest and swearing at everybody about this. And we had an argument in front of my mother's coffin for about, for me it seemed like it lasted an hour, I guess it was a minute. And we sent her back. And she came back about 3 hours later. Guess what? Oak brass. And that was the moment. That was the moment when I realized if I don't, who will? And everybody else, you could see the whole church was thinking, who is this kid yelling and screaming at the top of his voice at the moment of his mother's funeral, calling the priest obnoxious words? How can he do this? That was the moment for me. That was it. Everything else became easy. That was it. Tell me, in this room, do you think I was right or wrong?
Right.
The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Everything else, easy. Easy. And I realized each of us is going to have that moment when we either do it or the rest of our lives will be regretting why didn't I. Does that make sense? And I think that is what drives a contentment. Because there's nothing worse than thinking, oh, I should have done that, I should have done that, why didn't I do that? Nothing worse. Because you can't undo it. Does that make sense? So, now you know who I am. Does that all sound sensible? So borrow money, do this, do that. Who cares? Who cares? We're all going to die, doesn't it? You know, what trace is going to be left? So, have I pissed you off? Does that all make sense? So that's me. Of course.
Do you think your father was like that?
He's an artist. Well, I spoke to my grandmother about it, and she said so my grandmother, she was born in St. Petersburg, moved to Terioki in Finland. She was taken out in the Russian Revolution by a coachman at night. You know, she and her brother went out in the middle of the night, you know, and then she and the family estates, and there was a White Russian army and all this bullshit, then moved to Berlin. They saw Hitler coming to power and thought this is really bad, and moved to Paris. Each time they had to sell lots of stuff, moved to Paris, and in the end worked for British intelligence. So as a a lady brought up in St. Petersburg, opposite the SARS residence. All she knew is languages. So she could translate 7 languages backwards and forwards in any combination fluently. That's what she could do. So she was working with British intelligence. She had a job with Alstom, which is an engineering company, and she used to feed information back to DI5 contact in the UK. So she had a radio and Morse code and all this stuff. So there was quite a lot of tension in the apartment. And my father was a bit wild. Sorry, this is a long story, right? My father was a bit wild, and apparently he and his friend Kapenkin, who was a Russian emigre friend as well, were a bit wild, and they used to get mortars. You know, if you have a tube, you drop something, and off it goes, boom. You know, they used to be able to dismantle them and take the explosives out. How stupid was that? And play tricks. And then they got caught by a soldier, and apparently the soldier was saying, "Which one of you is it? Which one? Which one? Which one? Which one?" Bang! Killed the Kapenkin. And apparently my grandmother said that's what threw my father off the rails. But I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't seen my father for years. He phones me up very often, asks for money, but that's all I know. Does that make sense?
So he must have been somehow unhappy.
He?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he had something. He's also an arse. He's violent, horrible. Horrible. He married twice more, did the same thing to each of the new wives. Awful. There's one girl I'll be seeing her. I'm flying back through Vienna. I'll be touching base with her. Ingrid Savatsky, lovely girl. So I'll be meeting her again. So anyway, does that all make sense? Is that okay?
I have a question. How did you come to peace with the fact that what happened to your mother, which is, I guess, not really related to happiness, but how did you come to peace?
Too late. What can you do? You can spend all your time being unhappy about it, or you can say, okay, it's happened, what can I do? Well, if there's a trace of me which is left in the world after I died, you know, my mother gave birth to me, for God's sake, so, you know, part of her is, lives on, and that's all I can do. Because otherwise you'll implode. So all you can do is say, well, that was yesterday, all that really matters is what do I do tomorrow. So this evening I'll be overnighting in Stansted. Tomorrow morning I go off through Bonn, I think, or no, Cologne to Klagenfurt, where I'm immediately met, and we immediately start with all these kids and everything. And you know, that's all you can do, isn't it? Am I making sense? I think you can spend a lot of time going back over things which you can't do anything about anymore. All you can do is say, right, let's move on and do good stuff. Is that okay? So anything have I pissed everybody off?
Well, maybe some people would look at such a situation more like it could be destiny, it would happen anyway next day maybe,
Yeah.
It was just like the day before because of my mistake or something, so you can just like understand such a thing that way.
Absolutely. We have no idea what can happen. And all we do know is that things are going to change all the time. So, you know, when things change, what we want to do is to be able to, the more you know yourself, the more likely you are to make the right decisions. Yeah, and sometimes, I don't know if I might even have a slide, I think you have to aim high at all times. You know what I mean, aim high is you've got to go for something which you think is really worthwhile, worth living for, as opposed to just something which is okay. And there are lots of limiters, which people will say. People will use words like, "You can't do that. It doesn't work." You know, people will say, "Who are you to come on?" You know, be thankful for what you've got. Bullshit. Be thankful what you've got. That's like a typical put you down, and you might live in a slum, but you could live in a bag, so you're lucky. Which doesn't mean I need a bigger car or a nicer thing. You've got to work out what you stand for. And a lot of times people don't work out what they stand for. What does it mean to be me? What is it which drives me as a person? Not what you think should be driving me, not what I think you want me to think, but what do I think? And the older you get, the more you can spend that time, and it'll change. It'll change over time. If you have nothing, what you want is things. If you don't have a family, what you want is a family. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's really there. And if you can step it, the reason why I say aim high is I sometimes talk to people. There's something really funny. If somebody doesn't have a car, and then they want a car which they want a car. If their car doesn't work, they want a car which works. And if you give somebody a car which works, they then realise, actually, I'd quite like to have auto-wiping windows and self-cleaning stuff. But at the time, they dare not say that's what I want, because it sounds like it's a bit too above your station. Do you know what I mean? Come on, you haven't got anything. Why are you saying all of that? So I like saying to people, if I talk to people, I love saying, in the ideal world, what would you really like? Really like? And quite often people are a bit upset by that. Because what do you mean? In the ideal world? I say, in the ideal world? Well, I'd like to have money. And then I say, how much? And they go, ooh, lots. What does lots mean? Enough to buy whatever I want. Whatever you want? Yeah. Well, how much does the house cost? Oh, I don't know. How much was the most expensive apartment sold in London last year? How much was that sold for? £168 million. So do you want one of them? Ooh, £168 million. Okay, so how much? Okay, well, and you see, it throws people, because this ridiculous thing which they say about I want lots. When you actually say, well, what does that really mean? And then you say, why? And they say, well, I want lots of money. So you want lots of money, go sell drugs. Oh no, I don't want to sell drugs. But if you want lots of money, sell drugs. Try and persuade poor people to stick a lot of drugs up their arse, travel, don't get caught, shit it out, then you collect it and sell it to people. That's how you can make a lot of money. I don't want to do that. Okay, then set up a gambling company. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So do you really want as much money, or do you want to be comfortable that people don't think you're a shit? Oh yeah, I want to be respected. Okay, you want to be respected. By whom? Do you sort of follow? And quite often people don't go through that analysis. So they're always thinking about something else. You know that expression about the grass is always greener? It's never always greener. We, as humans, we're a tribal animal. We always want something else. But that's okay. Good. Good.
I don't want a car.
Good. What do you want?
I would like to do something what's useful for the world.
For how many people?
All people of the world.
What, there's 7,200 million. That's a lot of people.
Well, I think.
Well, 7,203 now.
It's enough to.
2005.
I think it's.
2010.
I think it's enough to start in my environment and to try to affect people around me, and then it's going wider.
Good. So that's lighting the fire, which is going to spread. Brilliant.
Inspired.
Inspired. Fantastic. And how will you know when you've inspired enough?
I do my best, and I want to be satisfied with myself.
So you are comfortable with yourself?
Yes.
You've got children? You've got one younger and one older?
Yes.
One 19? Boy or girl?
Yes.
Girl? What's she going to do?
What she can do?
What is she going to do?
The older one, she's going to study at the university, hopefully, next year.
Doing what?
Economics, but she likes diplomacy.
So you must be really pleased that you have given birth to a girl who's going to be doing such great things.
I don't care actually.
What do you
because,
mean? What? How would you feel if she was in prison?
I think it's good that she's happy. I don't care if she's studying or doing baking cakes
Good.
or something. I think it's important that she finds the right way.
And dare I ask you, are you over 30?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel the same way when you were under 30?
I think you change.
Yeah.
with age.
Yeah. So we will change. Does it make sense? So when you become over 60, it'll change even more. Are you okay? I've got something which is really funny. Well, it's not funny. It's you go, oh shit, really? But I've only got the sound is only on my laptop.
I think the projector has sound.
Sorry?
I think the projector has sound.
Yeah, but it probably works on Bluetooth, and my Bluetooth stack isn't very
You
good.
try
on
it.
this. I did try it.
You
But
got the Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah, but my Bluetooth stack is because.
We have a USB cable.
Have you?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work on USB. Have you got a 3.5mm to 3.5mm stereo jack cable?
What is that?
Okay, I'm a geek, right? Okay, it doesn't matter. Look, you'll have to. You might be able to hear it. Whoops. Sorry. Do you think you might be able to hear that?
Try it.
So you want to. The speaker's here, so you don't want to. It's just on the thing. So this is a great little piece on training fleas. You know what a flea is? A flea is a little creature, little tiny one, which hops around, and they go on animals, and if they go on you, you scratch and all this sort of bullshit. Okay?
But they prefer animals.
Sorry?
They prefer animals.
They prefer animals, unless
And hedgehog.
and hedgehogs and sometimes people. And fleas have very short life, so their regeneration is quite fast. Okay, and this is a film about training fleas. You know, training fleas. You're a trainer, right? You're a trainer. Training fleas. Okay. So what you need to do, and I'll explain it. You need to get the fleas, and you need a glass jar and a lid. Okay, and you put the fleas in the jar and close the lid, and leave them for 3 days. They don't die. And then you undo the lid. All right, and that's what the rest of it's going to show. Are you all right with this? Oh. Well, that hasn't bloody worked, has it? Excuse me, I'll. Do you remember I was saying I thought this was going to be so clever, and I haven't done this properly. And you've got to tell me when I get boring, all right? Am I boring you? You sure? Let me look at fleas. F-L-E-A-S. Training fleas. Here we go. All right, you ready?
Training fleas requires a glass jar with a lid. The fleas are placed inside the jar, and the lid is then sealed. They are left undisturbed for 3 days. Then, when the jar is opened, the fleas will not jump out. In fact, the fleas will never jump higher than the level set by the lid. Their behaviour is now set for the rest of their lives.
You can even remove the jar.
And when these fleas reproduce, their offspring will automatically follow their example.
How scary is that? And fleas have got a cycle, a regenerative cycle of 2.5 days. So if you leave them there for 3 days, the fleas are training their baby fleas. So if you remove the lid, if you take the lid off, they will leave that as their ceiling. If you take the whole jar away, they'll all be within that. And the reason why I show that to people is to say, I wonder how many of us accidentally get conditioned to believe that this is our limit. in whatever it is, you know. And in this country we have this amazing thing, 75, okay? And this is 1864, and this is a picture of Piccadilly Circus taken in 1875, and a school in 1875. So kids in school were being trained to take advantage of this world. You got it? And so let's have a look at how that's changed over time. 1904, 1932, 1947, 1965, 2007, 2014. What do you notice? It's all the same. And I can show pictures anywhere around the world if you want, and we can see the same things.
Maybe the things they are thought changed.
Exactly. I was in, and everybody can probably remember that. These exams, you know, you're being taught stuff for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then you have a 2-hour exam, and that will determine a huge amount, a huge amount. So I get a bit pissed off by all of that. So let me show you where that's taken me. So I do all this stuff, right? So you know that, okay? So just in case, I met some weirdos in a country called Iceland, and I helped put a TV show called Lazy Town together, which is the kids' show with high energy, no violence, and all that stuff. And I like doing that sort of thing. I like doing that sort of thing. But me, I'm at my best. I've discovered I'm at my best if I'm talking in front of an audience of a few thousand people. It wasn't long ago when I'd be really scared about being an audience of 2,000 or 3,000 people, but now I'm at my best. This I find really scary because you're all looking at me. It's really scary, and I'm rubbish, and I want to be, you know, inspirational and fun, and I can't because I don't know how to do it anymore. Does that make sense? And we do change very, very fast, very, very fast. And I love meeting amazingly interesting people. This woman I met last year, I'm in good contact with her, Christina Balan. She is Hungarian scientist working out of Seattle, and she's the woman who invented the Tesla. You know the car, the electric car, which everybody thinks is Elon Musk. It's not. It's Christina Balan. Nobody's heard her name, but she is responsible for 80% of all electric hybrid cars in the world today. One woman. And I remember talking to her and I said, you're a woman in a world of engineering and cars, and I guess there are a lot of men around, and what do they say to you? You know, do they ever put you down? She said, every single day. And I said, what do you do? She said, well, I can do 2 things. I can either fight it, or I can just do really great things and just say to hell with it. And it's amazing when we meet people like that. This guy is a brilliant pediatrician, you know, a doctor with small kids, who does all the small kids, and he decided after he worked working with small kids for about 7 years that he needed to do something different for a while. So he went to the circus and he became a trapeze artist. You know the trapeze? You know, catching people. He did that for 3 years. He said, okay, I'll go back to being a doctor again. So all sorts of people are doing all sorts of different things. So the only thing is beware of conforming and beware of mindsets. So I'll do a test. What do you see here? What do you see? Say it, say it. What do you see?
Come on, sexual attraction, love.
Sexual attraction. So man and woman having sexy time?
Yeah.
What do you see?
A piece of art.
A piece of art. What?
Painting.
Oh, wow.
A painting. Okay. Of what?
Object.
What object?
Vase.
It's okay. You're okay. What do you see?
Same as what they said.
What do you see?
Yeah, same and water and something written, but I can't read it.
Yeah. What do you see?
You say?
As what? Man and woman having sexy time? Or a vase?
I don't know.
Okay.
Couple making love.
Man and woman having sexy time?
Yeah, couple.
Yeah.
No.
I see what's
Okay. Who sees dolphins?
It's written something of dolphin.
Dolphins.
No.
They're dolphins.
They are too.
No, it's l'amour des dauphins. Who sees dolphins? No? This is a test of human sexuality, by the way. If you are not sexually aware, you will see dolphins. If you are sexually aware, you will see a man and woman having sexy time. If you see both, you are sexually aware and aware that you're sexually aware. If you do not see dolphins, it means your mind is on one track only. Dolphins.
Where are the dolphins?
Here's a dolphin. Here's a dolphin. Here's a dolphin. The whole thing is dolphins. It's you who have decided it's a man and woman having sexy time. Which is why if you show it to a 3-year-old, they'll see dolphins. If you show it to a 16-year-old, they'll see a man and woman having sex with them. And they might even go, see? Do you see what I mean? We see what we want to see. We understand what we want to understand. We believe what we want to believe. We can do that very easily. Have you ever been on one of these? Do this next time. Have a look. If you see escalators moving, watch, if you can, a small kid getting on an escalator for the first time, because they tend to and either their parents will pick them up and put them, or you'll see a kid who will jump onto a step. Okay, then they get carried up or down, and then the difficulty is getting off. When you are used to an escalator, the difficulty is when you walk up to it and it's off. Because if it's off, it screws you up. Because we are used to standing and adjusting our bodies to allow it to take up. So when it's off, a lot of people find it really weird getting on it. And even more weird getting off. Because if you're going down, the step height changes and people start stumbling. And sometimes you see people getting off an escalator which is off and being really pleased with themselves for having managed it. So we get used to that. And the same thing happens with the flea. The same thing happens with man and woman having sexy time. We're not very good at really analysing. And if you want the final thing, because I'm going to close, the final thing, which of these lines is longer?
Both of them.
Is it this one? This one?
Looks longer. It's not.
Or is it this one?
Both the same.
Same size? Not the same size. No. This one is 23% shorter. So why did we say same size? Who has seen that before? Who has seen that sort of trick before? So change our opinions and change the mindsets really quickly. Really quickly. Just something as pathetic as this. You can get people to say, what is interesting is when I said which one is longer, very seldom people go, yeah. Because if you do that with your eyes, if you do that by moving something in front of you, you can see that one's shorter. You can see it. Do you sort of follow? But we are really, really bad at that because we're used to being taught in schools. Schools are about compliance. Me teach, you learn, and we find it very hard to break free, which is why we very quickly become the flea. Does that make sense? So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. And I think happiness really occurs when you are at ease with yourself, when you're comfortable with the decisions you're making. You know there could be something else, but you're not caught up by it. You're not screwed up by all the things which you didn't do in the past. You're looking forwards. You are at ease with yourself. And you tend to find people who are at ease with themselves are naturally happy. That doesn't mean they're going to continue being at ease. They will be moving and changing, but they're at ease. So if you're ill at ease, if there's something which you'd rather do, do it. Because otherwise, you'll wake up and think, shit, I should have done that. Why didn't I? Does that make sense? So I spend my time talking to people. I love asking people all sorts of questions. I'm sometimes impertinent asking questions. You know, why did you do that? How did you do that? Because I'm interested. I might be able to help them. They might be able to help me. Does that make sense? And the more we can surround ourselves by talking to different people and learning about different things, the more likely we are to end up by doing something which makes us feel content and satisfied. Phew. I told you I'm shit in a small audience. I'm much better if there were thousands of people. I'm really sorry. I hope this hasn't been too awful or too boring for you. Has it been all right? You sure? So that's me. So you know, you can tweet at me or follow. I tweet occasionally. What I really love is working with young people. I love it. I love taking young people to meet amazing people. So where am I? So Friday, Saturday, Sunday I come back via Vienna to meet Ingrid. Then I come back to London. I think I land at midnight. And then I'm on a train at 6 o'clock in the morning to go up to the north in a place called Warrington, where I'm working with 500 kids. And then the day after, I've got a dozen kids, and we're doing some really interesting people in London. We're taking them to meet the woman who started something called the White Company, which is a design-led company. Then we're going off to the directors of Metro Bank, which is a bank. Then we're having lunch with a guy who runs a social enterprise training homeless people in how to become chefs, 2,500 people later. Then we're going off to Snapchat to meet the guys who founded it in London, a guy who joined Snapchat when there were 2 people. It's now 200 in London, but Snapchat, you know, is just another social media, right? And then we're finishing off with an engineer who's trying to reprofile cities. And for kids to meet those people, boy, does something happen. I can't believe I get paid to do this. I don't, but I can't believe that sometimes I get paid. Does that make sense? Is that okay? I'll stop. There you go. That's it. No more.